Here we go. There we are. Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to the stream. And we've got a potential move to be talking about. It was one that was reported by Graham Smith yesterday. Graham, who is the knower of some things, which is why he tends to be one of those people that you can sort of lean on in the direction of. And this report came out in the brief period of time before there was a full agreement made between Leeds United and Manchester City for James Trafford, which I was going to cover in a video for this morning. Ended up not doing that because that wouldn't have made a huge amount of sense to me. So here we are now discussing it now. So the player that Leeds United are taking a look at is the Levante forward, Carlos Espi, who is a genuinely very, very, very good player who is very, very young. This seems to be something that we are sort of forming a little bit of a trend in the general direction of sort of young players that have a hell of a lot of potential, and we can sign and then move on for a profit in the long run, or they can become a core part of their side, or whatever. Basically, younger players are better to have your hands on, and if someone's been born in 2005, then maybe they're a player that you can have for a very, very, very long time, which is the case for Carlos Espi. A little bit more of the sort of details around Carlos Espi. This is going to annoy a couple of people, but this is just the reality of the situation and the way that it was reported by Graham Smith. Carlos Espi is on the list of strikers they like, but no bid or move imminent. Now, if you are someone that has come here going, oh, he's about to come in through the door right away, oh my god, that would be fantastic. That's not the reality of the situation. Sorry, I've noticed the camera is very slightly on a wonk. There we go. That's not the situation. It's not a case of there is a move now, it's happening right away. That's not the case. That's not what's happening. But the fact of the matter is we are now keeping an eye on a striker which is of this sort of young category that falls into the Muharemovich, Trafford, Shea Charles area of young player, a lot of potential, gonna get a shift on. When it comes to the specific details of Carlos Espi and his career, he has been genuinely pretty good for the last couple of seasons. So, 2 seasons ago, 24-25, he was playing for Levante. He played 36 games of football at the age of 19. Most of these were off the bench. He only got 510 minutes, but in those 510 minutes, he got himself 6 goals and 2 assists, which was a massive return, and he was a fairly significant part of Levante's sort of promotion bid, and they managed to come first in the league, and that was fantastic. Zenex, if you're going to keep being like that, I'm just going to block you because I can't be bothered with it, to be honest with you. Beyond this, you look at last season, you look at his time at Levante last season, everyone with them having just come up assumed that Levante would probably be getting relegated. And let's be honest, it was a fair assumption to make because if you've just been promoted, odds are you'll be the next team to go down. And they came incredibly close to relegation. Like, there's no sort of beating around the bush on that one. They ended up coming 16th, which you might think, okay, 18th and lower goes down. That's fine. It's 16th. That's okay. They got 42 points last season. And sure, they could have gotten up to 13th if they got 43 points, but I feel like a lot of people didn't quite realise how ridiculously close La Liga was last season, because with 13th place had 43 points, 19th place had 41. They managed to survive, not even on goal difference, but on head-to-head results against Osasuna and Mallorca, which is genuinely insane. And I'm going to actually have a little bit of a look at if he was one of the players that scored against Mallorca for them. Because if he was, he effectively kept them in the league himself. Because that's just a fun little fact and tweak about how exactly this works. Carlos Espi scored against Mallorca in their victory against them on the 17th of May and effectively made sure that Levante stayed in La Liga. But all of this sort of quality football coming from Carlos Espi has attracted a hell of a lot of potential from a hell of a lot of clubs. I'm just going to have a quick look to make sure I've got my details right on this one. There we go. Now, when you're having a look at a striker that scored 11 goals in La Liga last season, and yeah, sure, he wasn't playing sort of constantly, but he was a little bit sort of rotational, 13 starts, 25 appearances overall, 1,300 minutes, that's still a goal every, 115, 120 minutes, something like that, which is a fantastic return. you're still going to be sort of competing against sides that are also looking to strengthen their squad, but not strengthen their squad with some like long-term established talent. That would be a sort of signing that like a Fulham might be looking at, or Aston Villa, or etc., etc., etc. Instead, Leeds seem to be having slightly easier opposition in the race for Carlos Espi, including Hull City, who are reportedly chasing after him, which is going to be an interesting one. I'm kind of curious about how Hull managed to attract players to their cause, considering that their position is not very good in the slightest. And alternatively, you've got Ipswich, who have a little bit more of a chance of staying up this season, don't get me wrong, because they had a better squad to begin with, and they are, in theory, making some better signings. But that doesn't make them safe at all, in my opinion. And I think of all of the clubs that I've seen linked with Carlos Espi, we are probably in the best position to get that one done. It's just a question of whether we want to, because to dive into it a little bit further, Graham Smith's mention of him being on the list but us not having made a move yet is very important, because those lists of players are going to be long. We don't know how long. It could be like we've got half a dozen players ready for each position. We don't know where he is on this list. But the fact that he has emerged as a player that we have an interest in means that he's not going to be towards the bottom of it. He's not going to be someone that we're looking at and going, well, yeah, if we miss out on Frankie Lino and someone else and someone else and someone else, then eventually we'll get to Carlos Espi. It more seems to me a case of Frankie Lino is up there, Carlos Espi is also up there. Hopefully we get one of those and we'll ultimately see where we end up, which would be a sort of interesting way of us going about it. But I genuinely have the belief that the signing of a Carlos Espi would be transformational, because the way that it would affect our club right now is colossal. It would mean that we are going from a club that is sort of stuttering along and stumbling a little bit, and I say that, but I'm talking specifically about the front line. We'd have a front line that goes from Calvert-Lewin, who's like, don't get injured, don't get injured, don't get injured, and Mecha, who we're looking at going, don't get injured, don't get injured, don't get injured, don't get injured, and Piru, who we're looking at going, you're not actually a striker in the Premier League, are you? Whereas someone like an Espi is young, he's very, very quick, he's tall, and he suits the sort of physical profile that we've been looking at for our players recently. And it all ultimately adds up to this package of a player that is almost exactly what we need at the moment. It's one of those players that you sign not for right now, but for, okay, you'll come here and you will develop and you will improve and you'll get better, and you know what, you'll make us better. And everyone sort of benefits from this kind of move. Levante benefit as well, because let's be honest, they need to sort of redistribute the money to the rest of their squad. The only reason they survived last season was because La Liga was incredibly weak, and it's not going to keep being that weak. It's going to get better and better and better and better. On that note, a little bit of a shame that Castillon didn't end up getting promoted. I was really optimistic for that one, but it wasn't to be the case, which is a bit of a shame. But there is also a little bit of conversation around a release clause, which, if I remember right, I've just got to make sure that the information's there. Yes, it is. SB does also have a release clause, which means that we'd be able to get him without having to fight for those massive fees that various clubs have managed to sort of work on. And it's important that we need to remember that SB is also almost certainly going to find a move out of his club. He's not been picked in the pre-season squad at the moment, which is interesting, which basically says that his club realised there's enough interest here for us to effectively find a move to wherever. It doesn't particularly matter what specific club he goes to. He's not going to be at Levante next season, so Leeds will look at this and go, he could be here. And the important thing is we don't need to do the whole bidding war bollocks again, because we get caught up in that so often. But in this instance, that release clause is fairly affordable. It's a release clause that's at 25 million euros, which you might look at and go, that's fairly high. That's a lot of money to spend on a player. That's more than we put into Stack, more than we put into Beal, more than we put into a few other players. But we need to remember the market for forwards is far more inflated than the market for any other position. Because at the end of the day, they're the sort of shiny players. They're the ones that you look at and go, well, they're the ones putting the ball in the back of the net, so why wouldn't you want to spend a little bit more money on those? Whereas your midfielders are a little bit less glitz, a little bit less glam, a little bit less shiny. So you're going to have to spend a little bit more on a centre forward. And sure, I would love the idea of us just signing free centre forwards that are able to do the same thing as Dominic Calvert-Lewin and Metcha, just again and again and again and again. But the reality of that situation is you're consistently signing strikers that are going to be the age of like late 20s, early 30s, which means that you're also missing out on a big financial opportunity because in sort of contrary to what Four Candles said a few minutes ago, saying, I'd rather we were looking at a more proven or established striker. I agree, a proven established striker would be fantastic. But a lot of the time, a proven established striker isn't the reality of the situation. A proven and established striker would cost even more money. A proven or established striker, like people are looking at Liam Delap and saying, well, why don't we just sign Liam Delap? Because at least you're paying £30 million for Liam Delap. And Liam Delap had a fairly stinky season at Chelsea last year, and that is in a squad where a hell of a lot of chances come your way. Whereas on the other hand, you've got Espi, who, playing in Levante, didn't have many opportunities at all. If I can just have a quick look at the La Liga XG table. See if I can pull this up. I need last season, I don't need this season. There we go. So expected goals per 90. Levante they had 1.34 XG per 90, which is not the worst in the league at all. But you compare it to clubs towards the top of the division, which is where you'd sort of put Chelsea, with their like 2.06 for Barca, 2.02 for Real Madrid. Liam Delap was working with a hell of a lot more chances and not scoring them, whereas Espi was working with far fewer chances and putting them away, which I think is sort of the difference maker here. And in addition to that, like, he's an efficient player. He had 57 shots last season in 25 appearances, and from that he had an XG per 90 of 0.75, which means that across 4 games you expect him to score 3 goals. He's creating a hell of a lot himself with the quality of his chances and getting himself in those good positions, which is massively important. And I think spending less on Espi than we would on Delap is a thing that just makes sense. And the fact that we'd potentially be looking at younger players as well means resale value. We need to remember we are not in the best position financially at the moment. We've been in the Premier League for the last 2 seasons. Sure, fine, that's good. However, a hell of a lot of the clubs around us have been here for longer. 15 of the clubs in the Premier League this season have been there for longer than us. Which means that we're going to be sitting in this position of, well, okay, so we can't spend as much as those sides because we don't have the same sort of financial build-up. We've not got the depth of squad to sell in the first place. And you build up that depth by getting younger players that will grow into having a bigger market value because... And I'm just going to be completely honest here, right? Completely plain and brutal, and a fact that we need to acknowledge is that players like Carlos Espi are not going to be the long-term future of Leeds United. In all likelihood, James Trafford isn't the long-term future of Leeds United. Muharemovic isn't the long-term future of Leeds United. Because if you take out what everyone keeps on saying with the sentimentality FC and all that kind of bollocks, it's kind of right. Because at the end of the day, young players are developing assets that you will at some point need to move on, because you will need to make a bit of money. Brighton understand that, and that's how Brighton get to be one of the strongest sides in the league. Ish, sort of, pound for pound, for the absolute whole of a stadium they're in. Bournemouth signing Ryan last year was an absolutely ridiculous move. They spent not too much money on him, actually, I think. Hold on, let's have a look. Ryan to Bournemouth. Ryan's move to Bournemouth was for £24.7 million, which is nothing in the modern sort of transfer era. And then if I search Ryan exit clause, because it's reported to be fairly significant, he's got a release clause of £130 million. So Bournemouth, by signing younger players, have potentially made £100 million of profit because they've picked out some good young talent. Sure, I liked what we did last season with 26, 27, £28 million, not £1 million players, 28-year-old players, sorry. But you can't keep doing that because eventually you will need to sell someone. And when you are trying to sell those players, after getting a couple of years of use out of them, they are suddenly 29, 30, 31, and they've lost a hell of a lot of their value. Because, let's be honest, as much as Chelsea are looking at signing Jordan Henderson and Danny Welbeck for some wild reason, not every club is going to be as daft. Not every club is going to just sort of throw money in various directions at players that don't really deserve to have the money thrown at them. Instead, you're going to have to pick up those younger talents. And that's what I think we've learned, and that's what we're doing this season, which is sort of important. Anyway, I'm going to have a quick dive through the comments just to see where we're at and answer a few questions. With the signings for big fees, does it put pressure on Parker to have a better season than last? Or the 49ers expect a similar season? I think similar. When we saw the pitch deck last season, this is the amount of money that we have to spend and these are our targets. They expected for the first couple of seasons that we'd be in this sort of area. I think they expected the same for the third season, and then we'd stabilise and improve. There is going to be a sense of realism within the board that says you can't just keep climbing up the table every single season because every single club thinks that they can climb. There's going to be an understanding of the fact that that isn't going to be a constant. And that's good, in my opinion. That's the 49ers being somewhat sensible. Also, very, very quick note. I know that Matty is doing Late Night Leeds at 9. I'm probably going to redirect people over at that point. So that's just a quick way of saying, don't just leave. I will throw you over in that direction at the right point in time. Thank you very much. But yeah, I think there's going to be an understanding that you can't just keep on climbing. It's not something that you can just permanently sustain, and the fact that that's understood is ultimately going to be a massive benefit. In the event that Leeds do qualify for Europe, yes, the restrictions will be tighter. You can spend, I think, 70% of your revenue as opposed to 85%, which is why I think Sunderland might not be in the most fun of spots at the minute, because their revenue isn't vast at the minute. Their revenue is relatively little compared to a lot of the Premier League clubs, and they're not able to sort of fluff it, if that makes sense. Have I got my flight tracker app open? No, I don't at the minute. I imagine there's not anything interesting, and if there is anything interesting, I would like to be certain this time, after what happened previously, and there's nothing private for the rest of the day anyway, and there's only a flight in from Newcastle tomorrow by the looks of it. Newcastle and London at 1:45 p.m, and one from Ibiza at 4:19. Maybe that's James Straff. I don't know. I will be more certain about the next flight tracking stream that I do at the very least. We're playing catch up to many squads in the Premier League. Signings we are planning makes them more competitive. I think takes away from the bottom three. Keep building, but won't overhaul everything. Yeah, I think a full overhaul is a bit much. Like people who are saying we need to ditch some of the players that, or at least the majority, because I've seen a few people say that as well. We need to ditch a bunch of players that were sort of rotational players last season. They'll still be rotational players this season. Like people have been saying, like we'll end up selling Nonto and Tanaka, and like maybe we do, but it's not going to be as vast and outgoing as a lot of people are indicating or want, because I think that's a little bit too much of a challenge for us to then pick up that momentum again and start going. We're just making things a little bit more difficult for ourselves in that instance. Bournemouth spent 10 million on Semenyo from Bristol City. Yeah, and Semenyo at that point was relatively young. And I think signing those younger players so they can develop and you can sell them on for massive sums of money, because the top six are completely uncreative and will just pick up whatever they can get their hands on from elsewhere, is fine, to be honest. Levante buy our hands off for 25 million euros. Someone lives in Alicante. I can confirm that finances are stretched. Even Valencia struggle to make ends meet. True, but I think Levante need to, and they will, recognise that they're in a position where they can spark up a bidding war amongst Premier League clubs. And as all potential bidding wars go, a Premier League one is what you need if you're a La Liga club. Because at the end of the day, if you're looking at trying to get various La Liga clubs to sign your players, you're not going to make that much money, because at the end of the day, the clubs that can spend a huge amount of cash and will in La Liga will be Barca, Real Madrid, Atletico, maybe Villarreal sneak in there if they've had a Champions League season, and athletic clubs sort of rule themselves out because in all likelihood it's not a Basque player, so they can't go for them. It's, yeah. So the fact that Premier League clubs are after them effectively means that they can go, no, we've got a release clause. And Hull and Ipswich and Leeds at the very least want to sign him, so have at it. We'll have either the highest bidder or the release clause, whichever you guys work out, but they know they're going to get a vast amount of money out of that situation. When it said revenue will be less if we qualify for Europe, we're talking about taking into account overall revenue will be bigger in Europe. Overall revenue isn't significantly bigger in most European competitions. The amount you get for the Europa League is fairly small, in the same way that the amount that you get for the European Conference League is fairly small. Like, the Champions League is the one that you particularly want. So if I have a quick look at Crystal Palace Conference League revenue. Yeah. So from the Conference League itself, Palace have earned £15 million this term. If you're going down from 85% of your revenue, which is over £100 million, we'll call it 150. So 85% of 150, 150 times 0.85 gives you £127.5 million to spend. That's all good. Now, if I turn that into 0.7, so 70% of 165, 115 million. So it is lower, because you've taken a vast chunk out of those sort of options, which is a bit of a shame. It feels like it's being punished for doing well, but you know what? That isn't our problem. That is Sunderland's problem, and they're going to have to work out a way to deal with it. It's not really an issue for us to deal with, to be honest with you. Small percentage of a larger amount, will it be much different? Yeah, it's down, basically. Joe's blown at the hidden gems known to all our competitors. It's fine. If there is a single scouting network anywhere that isn't aware of like more significant players, then I don't know what they're doing, to be honest with you. It feels like they should know of these players before I do, and if they don't, then they're not very good scouts. Where are we? Won't matter who we play, Ellen Road will be full plus extra TV. I'm confused. I mean, yeah, but it's more like the competition revenue. Like, the TV revenue is not that much bigger in the Europa League and the Conference League, so it would harm you more than helping you. Is Byram still at the club? I believe he was offered a contract. I've not heard anything further since. So he might be, might not be. It's yet to be agreed. Mr. Starter Stream, was there a humming intro? I don't know if I remember to do a humming intro. I think I just went right into it. So apologies. I will make sure I do hum intros going forward. Anyone know where James Trafford is on holiday? I'm not 1,000% sure. I saw something about Ibiza, but it's not guaranteed. He could probably do his medical elsewhere, but I think if he's anywhere in Europe, it would make vastly more sense for him to do it at Leeds, because he'd still need to do media and pictures and all that kind of stuff. Like, the life of a footballer is on the other end of a camera lens, so I think there's no way in hell that we do anything but get James Trafford, either if he's in the US, to our training camp, do the media there, or to not Old Trafford, sorry, I keep saying Trafford, that was my bad, apologies, to Elland Road, there we go, or Thorpe Arch to do his media there, because you don't really sign anyone without having the interview and the pictures and the X and the Y and the Z, because if Leeds put out a single tweet that was like, James Trafford has signed for Leeds United for an undisclosed fee, everyone would be going, so where is he? So what's gone on then? It'd be madness. If we play a back four, who's going to be dropped from centre-backs? I feel it would be Beale. I think probably Beale, yeah. But I think throughout the season we're going to vary between the two systems. I don't think it's going to be a pure 4 at the back or a pure 3 at the back. I think it's going to be depending on our opponents. Because if we play 3 at the back against Hull, when I think having a number 10 would be massively beneficial for us, all we're going to do is cause ourselves some issues. Because they're going to sit deep this season a lot of the time. They sat deep a lot of last season as well. But Tommy, I am a United fan, a Leeds United fan. Are you trying to implicate the existence of another United? I know of Newcastle, West Ham. Is Carlisle United? It might be. I'm running out of Uniteds. Unless, is it in Manchester? No, because that's Man City and scum. But yes, I am a United fan. Leeds. Presumably he's the least mobile, and when we do tend to go for it at the back, it's to chase a result. Yeah, I think that's going to be the case. And I think, like, against sides like Hull, we're going to probably play with 4 anyway. So the 15 million euros wouldn't include matchday gate revenue, etc. Yes, but I don't think the gate revenue would increase by enough to make up that deficit. Like, I think we massively overestimate how much we make on the gate. Like, yeah, you're going to get a few more fixtures in, but then again, all of that match day revenue, you only get 70% of that to put towards the fee. The sum. So that's, yeah, Oxford. That's the one I was missing. Thank you very much. But yeah. Qualifying for the Europa League raises our profile and can be a backdoor into the Champions League when we have a 50k ground, extra 10 capacity. Games season is a big earner too. Yes, I mean, I still think the 70% is lower than it would be worth for maybe the next season or two when we're trying to build a proper solid squad. But it's a complicated one. Any updates on wing-backs? I've not heard anything about a left-back or a right-back, but there's got to be something on the horizon. I'd be very, very confused if we didn't sign any wing-backs at all, because at the moment it is James Justin, Jayden Bogle, Gabby Goodmanson, question mark, because Byram hasn't signed his contract yet. So that's where things get a little bit tricksy. What Nigel might be worth in today's market, 70 million. Yeah, I mean, it'd be big. I think there was some like company that was like, here's what every historic transfer fee would have been. And it's like, it doesn't really make a huge lot of sense, because it's like you can't apply football inflation because it doesn't match real world inflation, and even then it's all theoretical. It's a bit daft. So it's kind of nuts. Beale's twice the player Rodon. Beale is vastly slower than Joe Rodon. That's the difference, I think. And when you're playing four at the back, you need quicker centre-backs to make sure that they are where they need to be, because you've not got that third man covering the line. So I think in the case of a four at the back, you very probably do go Joe Rodon. But yeah, if it is a 4-2-3-1, I imagine Beale wouldn't be the jolliest if we go to a 4-2-3-1 and he doesn't play any football. But then again, he's aware that he's part of a squad, and it's fine. Rotherham, Colchester, Hartlepool, Sutton. I knew I was missing some, but it was sometimes when you're in front of a camera, it's like I'm just going to think of what I can think of, and if I dwell on the listing Dundee United, that's another good one. And if I continue to just sort of like list Uniteds, various people will get bored and leave. And it's, hold on, I'm going to unveil a thing. And this is things that I don't know if I'm allowed to unveil, but I'm going to unveil it. This is the data what I get. And there's been times in the past where, for example, when I did the countdown segment, where I could see this line of concurrent viewers just go down. So that's why a lot of the time I will not dawdle on a subject, because it saddens to see the number go down. So help push the number up, and at the same time help to push the likes number up. There's 101 of you at the minute, which is massively appreciated, but I want to see how high that gets. That'd be quite nice. What profiles we need to sign a wing-back or full-back? Talk about it. Okay, ball of an 8. I don't know if you could hear that bike outside. You see, hold on, let's just prove the point. The concurrent viewers have apparently gone down. Yeah, in terms of left-backs and right-backs, we know we're going to have to get players that sort of bomb down each respective wing, just so it sort of suits. But also people that are good on the defensive side. Lainu would be ideal. If we do trust him, I absolutely don't mind that as an option. But that's where the sort of question comes in around, can we realistically say that Lainu is going to be that additional left-back option? It's tricky. It's not one that makes a whole amount of sense. Anyway, I now have Matty's stream on the side, so I'll ping everyone over when that comes. But in the meantime, let's have a little bit more of a natter, because I like having a chat with you guys, because you're nice and we have a good vibe together, and it's all lovely stuff. Where does Gray and Matteo Joseph fit into the long-term striking option for the club? Are they likely to be the long-term successor to DCL? It depends. Matteo, I don't think so. Matteo, the countdown chat needed you to recreate the last few seconds clock sound. Sorry. The Matteo thing, I don't see him having a role at Leeds United again in the future. I think Matteo is a player that has absolutely ruined his time at Leeds United by making it as toxic as possible on the way out, which is never going to go well for someone. All you've done is make the entire conversation worse. Harry Gray, I think, is a player that we that has a lot of potential, and we know that, and that's why we're sending him out on loan. And I think, ideally, yes, he is our number 9 going into the future. But the question mark around that is he going to develop as much as we want and need him to going into the future? And I think that he will. I think that's the sort of direction that we're going to see him going. But that's not going to be the easiest. It's tough. Yeah. Likes are free, you type. Yes, not only are likes free, but as is subscribing. So that'd be nice. Thank you very much. Haha, you see, I'm learning how to do these little sort of segues. It's quite good. Wrexham unplugged us in 30 seconds. Okay, we had 3 and it was offside, but we need the defence. We ain't chicken tikka billionaire crap. What are you talking about? Yeah, when it comes to the back line will improve as time goes on. Like, we got to remember, this was the first friendly of our pre-season. Wrexham had about 3 already, which means that A, they are more match fit, B, we were playing a side that is realistically miles off what our normal first team's going to be, and we'd done training in the morning, which means that our players are going to be a little bit more tired. We treated it as a training exercise, which is fine. At the end of the day, if you are playing headers and volleys, no one's bothering to keep track of the score. When you're taking shots against a goalkeeper to warm up pre-match, you've not got a tally chart on the side of the pitch going, right, okay, Ampadu scored 2. Thank you very much, Munchy Toy. Ampadu scored 2. Okay, that's good. DCL only put away 1, so we'll put Ampadu up top. No, at the end of the day, there we go. That was Matty's stream starting. But yeah, at the end of the day, the Wrexham match doesn't matter. We'll see how things go against... where I'm able to end this sentence. We'll see how things go against Sunderland. We'll see how things go against Liverpool. At the end of that, I think we'll have a better idea of where we are. But even then, I don't think we can make a proper judgment on where we're at in pre-season until Man United. Because at that point, we'll have the majority of our signings actually playing in the same lineup. And James Trafford will be allowed to play again because he won't be allowed to against Leipzig. But yeah, it feels like a sort of coward's approach to go, we don't know yet, but we really don't. But anyway, I'm going to leave that stream there for now. However, I am going to send you guys over doing a quick little raid. What do we say? I don't know. That'll do. Just go over saying that Joe B says they're all nerds. That'll do it. Why not? Or just do like Joe B raid or something. I know, mate. He's got a really long intro. Like, I don't do it. Most of the but that's my intro. Anyway, I'm gonna leave that there because I do also have a baby to look after. So I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, comment, all the fun stuff, and I will see you all later. Toodaloo, me amigos.